Like when they arrest, they don't just say you, yeah, I'm going to arrest you. They just say, we're going to have a conversation with you. So the conversation might take 20 years or might take 50 years, who knows.
The military has carried out a coup d'etat in Myanmar.
But this is not only about the coup. It's about freedom of speech and the future of Myanmar as a democratic country. It started on February 1st, when the military detained key political figures.
Military coup erased Myanmar's civilian government, the military declaring a state of emergency over suspect voter fraud claims.
While Myanmar was undergoing a process of democratization, at least until February, many of the current problems have their seeds in colonial Burma. In 1824, the first Anglo-Burmese war started, and with that, the British had set foot into Myanmar, then called Burma. It took them until 1885 and 2 more wars to control the entirety of Burma, which they then controlled until 1948, when Burma gained its independence. One of the main tools used by the British to control the population during the colonial era was divide and conquer. In the beginning, the Burmans, the largest ethnic group in an ethnically diverse region, were favored by the British. They gained privileges if they repressed the other ethnic groups. In the early 20th century, however, after the First World War, when many Burmans were striving for independence, the British recruited many ethnic minorities, mainly Karen, Chin and Kachin, to violently suppress the mainly Burman rebellions against colonial rule. It went so far that during the Second World War, the Burmese Independence Army, for the most time, fought with the Japanese, because they hoped to gain independence from the United Kingdom afterwards, while many ethnic minorities fought with the British Burma Army against the Japanese. This period is one of the main reasons why there is such a big division between the ethnic groups in Myanmar, and therefore also responsible for many of the problems since then. One of the main leaders of the Burmese Independence Army, General Aung, was of major importance for the struggle of independence. He united the ethnic minorities, signing the Panglong Agreement, calling for a union of Burma with open discussions for self-ruling areas. However, in July of that year, he was assassinated, and that agreement failed. The independence of Myanmar was later officiated by the first democratically elected Prime Minister U Nu in 1948. In 1962, calls from ethnic minorities for a more federal state, which they were promised in the Panglong Agreement, led to the military, mainly consisting of Burmese soldiers, to stage a coup d'etat and take control of the country in a military dictatorship. Almost 2 decades later, a series of protests led by university students started in 1988. I talked with one of the protesters from that time about the protests and about the elections in 1990.
Later on, students organized, we should have a general strike nationwide. So we targeted the August 8th, as the day.
During these protests, the army troops fired on peaceful activists and killed thousands, in what has come to be remembered as the 4/8 uprising. It is estimated that between 3,000 and 10,000 people were killed during these protests, but the exact numbers were never reported. Amidst this revolution, Aung San Suu Kyi, daughter of Aung San, the general who was assassinated in 1947, returned from abroad and rose to prominence following a speech calling for a democratic government on the 26th of August. In September 1988, however, a new military junta seized power and concluded the protest in a bloody coup. Thousands of activists and student leaders were arrested or killed. This military junta promised an election in 1990. During this period, Aung San Suu Kyi formed the National League for Democracy Party, the NLD.
During the 1990 election, Aung San Suu Kyi was already under house arrest, and a few other senior leaders were imprisoned. She couldn't campaign for the elections, but NLD still won the election landslide. People were happy, like 2020, but right after military regime didn't transfer.
Following this election, the military junta remained in power for another 20 years. During this period, human rights violations and military repression escalated across the country, but especially in ethnic minority areas. Many were forced to flee or remain under threat in non-ceasefire zones. In 2007, following a series of peaceful protests, the military wrote a new constitution, which put the country on the path to democracy. Following the new constitution, elections were held in 2010, 2015 and 2020. In 2020, Aung San Suu Kyi's party, the NLD, won a landslide victory, with over 80% of the votes going to her party. However, the military-backed USDP party claimed that there was massive voter fraud going on. The elected members of parliament were supposed to be sworn in on the 1st of February 2021. This, however, did not happen, as at 4 a.m. that morning, the military detained the president, Aung San Suu Kyi, and other members of parliament, once again seizing control of the country in response to the election fraud. I spoke to one of the teachers who volunteered in the election committee about the claims of election fraud and her point of view. This point of view is also supported by independent observers, which monitored this election. Right now, the military is trying to manufacture evidence about sad voter fraud. And this military takeover is only possible because of the shortcomings of the 2008 constitution. When I saw about it, he said,
"It is for the military to protect their power, remain in power and control the power.
And it is doing so by guaranteeing one of the vice president roles to the military, as well as total control over the Ministry of Defense, Home Affairs and Border Affairs. The civilian government never had any control over the budget or the decisions of the military, and was therefore always afraid of a potential coup. The 2008 constitution also reserves 25% of the seats in parliament to the military. Given that any change in the constitution requires more than 75%, was basically impossible for the civilian government to change the constitution or to take privileges away from the military, due to the fact that the military still holds total control over the security forces that allowed them to take over the country in February 2021 by arresting key political figures. I spoke to the daughter of one of the arrested politicians about the general situation. Her dad was arrested in 2007 and now again in 2021.
He worked in the party, the National League for Democracy. He is the secretary for the Mandalay district or Mandalay division, we call it. That's why he got detained.
So he did not commit any crime or anything?
No, he didn't. You know, like when they arrest, they don't just say, yeah, I'm going to arrest you. They just say, we're going to have a conversation with you. So the conversation might take 20 years or might take 50 years, who knows.
The family still doesn't know where her father is and how he's doing. Following the military coup, the people are once again taken to the streets to fight peacefully against another military dictatorship. One young woman that I've spoken with from the Pai ethnic minority in Shan State said that
for the younger people from the ethnic minorities, even if we don't support the NLD, we don't want to live under another dictatorship. So we're all fighting to overthrow the military rule.
One of the main forms of protesting is the civil disobedience movement, in which civil servants such as doctors, teachers and lawyers are not going to work to show their revolt against the military dictatorship. It is very effective, as it holds a lot of the government actions that keep a country running. The military is responding with threats and violence against this movement. The teacher I've spoken with said, And on the 22nd of February, there was a massive general strike going on, already called the 5-2s revolution, in reference to the 4/8 movement, which we talked about earlier, in which hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to demand an end of the military dictatorship. At the same time, the military is trying to create an atmosphere of fear, so that they can step up as strong men to protect the people. For that, they are using the same techniques as in 1988, imprisoning political leaders, spreading fake news, and releasing prisoners to create unrest. New laws also make it illegal to speak up against the coup or the military. When I saw about the new law, he said,
well, we should not worry about it. As long as the regime remain in power, they will pass any laws they want. So what we need to do is just remove that regime. And then you don't have to worry about any laws.
This view seems to be shared by many people in the country. Although many have stayed neutral or unaware of ethnic voices in the past, current protests have opened up conversations about minority rights, as well as unity between the ethnic group.
With these protests, we ethnic minorities are not only asking for democracy, but we're also asking for a change in the 2008 constitution, leading to a more federal country.
This sentiment seemed to be acknowledged by the people from the Burmese majority that I have spoken to.
Imagine that we win a movement and the military hands over the country to the electoral government, and it is important for us to fight for freedom and rights of ethnic groups.
People are coming together in these difficult times, not only to contest the status quo, but also to move forward to a more democratic country, free of military influence, towards a country where all people of Myanmar speak up for minority rights, towards a country in which ethnic minorities are represented and maybe can govern over their own areas, as opposed in the Panglong Agreement 1947 by General Aung. I have spoken with each of these people that I just quoted for an extended period of time. But to make a concise video, I only included some bits of these conversations. If you want to hear more of them, we're going to have a panel discussion with these people, as well as some guests on this date. The links for that are in the description. If you want to know more right now, there are more links in the description about the history and the current situation. You can also follow the Circle Squared Instagram page, which will go into more detail regarding some topics. If you right now want to support the civil disobedience movement financially, there's also a link down for that in the description. If you still have any questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments below. And if you like, please do subscribe.